Hello and welcome to John and James Live. My name is John Hastings and I am with the main man, Mr. James Celo. And today, James, we are going to be talking about, is the economy a female economy? Big question, James, isn't it?
Controversial, mate.
Controversial. You know how we came up with that title, James? Because you are a very feminine man. Is that why?
That's possibly why.
Yeah, behind that fantastic masculine beard is a very smooth chest.
Beats the hairless chest.
Yeah. With hairless chest.
An emancipated man. I put the man in emancipated. There you go.
Exactly. I don't know. I can't remember how I got onto this. So I was speaking to my wife in the morning and then something clicked.
Oh.
I just can't remember what the subject was. And I thought, we are living in a very female orientated economy. And James, I will make my case. And let's start off by saying, James, this is not a macho masculinity thing.
No,
we're not doing.
Worn my little mushroom top just to prove the lack of masculinity that's coming into this conversation.
Yeah, I would say we are reasonably feminine guys in many ways. I would say we will make that case.
Yeah.
And we don't hate women. We've got daughters. We've got wives. This is not a chauvinistic man thing or an Andrew Tate thing. This is an exploratory conversation about quite a sensitive subject.
Yeah.
And something that women might agree with as well. So the case in point was, James, that 80% of consumer household spending is done by women, which was an interesting stat in itself.
Where did you get that stat from?
I got it from the National Statistics of Statistics Society of Statistics.
National Statistics.
That's the one. People can check it out anyway. I found it on ChatGPT, of course.
Well, clearly it was a rigorous.
And that's always correct, isn't it?
Gone into consumer.
Anyway, behavior. Women are spending all the money in the house.
I think, generally speaking, that's
don't shoot the messenger.
Isn't it? I would say that's generally accepted, isn't it? I don't know. There's a major.
Yeah. Apparently, guys are spending more on electronics and higher value items, apparently, so it ends up equaling out somewhere.
Right.
But I would suggest that in probably the more ground level economy, then it's quite female orientated, where we've still got things like finance, which is male dominated, which is the circulation of money, which is obviously a big part of GDP. But I was trying to argue with ChatGPT to say, look, give me some percentages here. What percentage of GDP is coming in through men, through women orientated services? And I was struggling to get it to tell me the truth. It's a bit sensitive. I think it's a bit wokey-o. A little bit woke. Yeah.
Is that a new word?
No, it came from the Tokyo Olympics. When somebody said it was a wokey-o Olympics.
Which quite maybe you could sort of trademark that one, maybe copyright it.
I think ChatGPT can get it. Doesn't see things as just an exploratory, objective conversation. It sees it as like it doesn't want you to get the wrong end of the stick. That's probably what it's doing, which is fair.
Trying to save you from yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I end up arguing.
Somebody has to.
Somebody has to, don't they? So I suggested that. Then I looked at other stats and I thought, okay, teaching, which is obviously a big part of bringing up the next generation, the influence on young people. It's like 70%.
I'm going to say dominated by women.
Women dominate the teaching industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, you got young boys, maybe dads are at work, they're being brought up by the mothers potentially, then they're going into school, it's very female orientated, and then they're coming back to the mums, dad might be working till later. Whereas before it would have been more, probably would have been more tribal, or if your dad was a farmer, you would be out early on the farm helping your dad. So you'd be surrounded by guys all day. Now you're a woman, you
Interesting.
boy, you're surrounded by women all day,
Yeah.
which was an interesting one. Then I looked at other areas of the economy, which I would say are dominated by, well, corporates, you would say HR, events,
Yeah.
very, you know, integral to business operations, very, and I noticed with Stephen Bartlett's team, very high percentage of women, which is not a bad, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It's just an
No,
observation.
this is just an observation and a commentary.
Yeah, these are obviously very.
There's no judgment. There's
people.
no, yeah, it's just an
And we
observation.
looked at social media, didn't we, James, on this one? And I was making the case that social media is a very feminine entity in many ways. It plays on the sort of signaling, especially the way my wife uses it and the way they sort of compare to each other on the photography, the artistic stuff, the design. If you think of an interior designer, you don't necessarily ever think gay man or woman. Or fashion. Fashion is a huge one, isn't it? Massive in that sense. Cosmetics, health, anti-aging, pretty much e-commerce seems to be dominated.
Does it feel like
women.
so historically, very much the preserve of the female side, those things you just cited, so cosmetic industry, fashion, very much skewed towards women. And now, I mean, you know, makeup for men, for example.
Yeah, war paint.
Fashion.
Have you seen that they named that?
War paint. Genius.
Well, imagine you're with your friends. Oh, it's just a bit of war paint. Just to be honest, I wear. I used to have bad spots as a teenager, and I used to wear the concealer that my mum gave me.
Yeah, no, we've all been there, mate.
And I couldn't. I would wear glasses, so I couldn't. I never put my glasses on before I used it, so I didn't rub it in properly. So you get everyone at school. Oh, he's wearing makeup.
It's kind of that stuff caked. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? And again, how much of it is driven by social media, that, to look a certain way in terms of appearance, very much. I mean, if you take my beard, for example, that's like very stylized, kind of the beard now is being cut very specifically, that you've got it kind of coming to here and then it's sort of shaved to there. And, the edge is very kind of like definite underneath here, all the shaving adverts and, the reels and everything else that I seem to be kind of inundated with. And very much about sort of male grooming, not only facially, chest hair, pubic hair, leg hair, whatever. It's this shift from being in the realms of the feminine to then blurring the edges to the masculine and what is deemed to be attractive. And whether that's men thinking what is attractive for other women, or this is women then influencing what they feel is attractive for men.
Yep.
And it's those lines that are blurred towards, well, actually, is this, we were talking earlier about working out and bodybuilding and the male physique. And are they doing that for other men to feel confident, to feel, like they
have big muscles
vibrant,
and you're comparing yourself to other guys, aren't you? And women will say, I'm not really into it. I like,
and the percentage of women that don't actually find that attractive.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting little study of going, well, there's a lot of women, and the whole kind of phenomenon around the dad bod.
Yeah.
And these
definitions.
definitions.
Shout out to the dad bods.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that was kind of like, that was a thing. And then it's not a thing. And now it's back into being a thing. So, there's when you think about, again, through history and the way that the human body, we're not going to differentiate at this point between male and female, but the way that the human body is presented. I think about Rubens, for example, the Rubenesque. Okay, so let's talk female figures then. They're being more kind of rounded, that whole sort of maternal element, voluptuous. And that being deemed to be attractive because it promoted, being reproductive, being fertile.
Yeah.
So, and then you go to the 60s and it's like, if you know about fashion in the 60s, the kind of the Twiggy era of being very elfin-like and svelte, thin, sort of more flat-chested.
Yeah.
And that fulfilled an aesthetic. And now we're sort of moving
along with the pill, didn't they? At that time, when the pill came out, it was
there's
a
lots of
sexual
different things
liberation there
that tie into this.
That was a big shift, the pill, James, in that 60s, 70s, wasn't it? Because then it liberates women to have
emancipation,
the control of their body.
Yeah.
Didn't it? So then that allows you to probably masculinize your mindset a little bit more to be different.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Well, it's choice, isn't it? It is choice.
It's the choice. Yeah.
Interesting. My father-in-law turns 80 over the weekend, and my wife's been creating a playlist for him. So he would have been around in the 60s. And we were...
Just say hi to Kathy first on this one.
Hi, Kathy.
James. Kathy, me and Kathy Kathy and I had a meeting yesterday, actually. Very interesting. I have a meeting in a minute, so I can't stay, but it's an interesting subject. I look forward to joining other broadcasts and stuff like matters in the world as is today. Thanks, Kathy. See you again soon. Take care.
Appreciate that. So anyway, I was listening to the lyrics of If I Was Bobby's Girl. I want to be Bobby's girl.
Yeah.
Bobby's girl. And it's clearly written by a man, a woman singing it. And it's all about the whole goal in life is to become Bobby's girl. And it's fascinating because you then start to listen to the lyrics and I'd be the best, most loyal girl in the world kind of thing. That's So, and this is coming out of the 60s and, going into the 70s, burning bras and well, that's
and now we've got WAP
kind of movement. Yeah. But it's just...
If anyone knows what that is, just Google it.
Yeah.
You don't know what that is, do you, James?
I have no idea.
It's something wet and it's arse and it's something else. So it's a song that they bring out, but it's literally the opposite of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Which is probably extreme sexualization, right? Which I think where you're heading is the extremes, the polar extremes, coming from World War II when capitalism and consumerism was kicking off, and where they really tried to focus on women in terms of keeping up with the Joneses, preying on people's desires. I think that feeling of being not enough or missing out was really pushed by probably a lot of men, to be honest, in boardrooms.
Totally.
And I think what we see now is that's proliferated past the women. So women are, fully integrated into that mindset. And now, and it is now into the men as well, isn't it? Where we're competing
we've
with
talked
similar
on
things.
Previous shows about post-war paranoia, where when we're off to war, women were put to work in factories, munitions, and they got a sense of independence where a lot of women were at home looking after the kids, whatever. They were then suddenly thrust out into the world. Guys were coming back after a period of working away, and they'd had this freedom. I saw a documentary on the building of Spitfires. Makes me sound incredibly interesting, doesn't it? But the women in these factories, and there were sort of young men in there, and they were apparently a sexual melting pot.
Yeah,
of liberation for sort of women, and sort of maybe women of an age with sort of younger guys that were working in these factories, and the stories that kind of came out of that. So there's this kind of liberation that came. But then films like The Wizard of Oz, where this kind of piece at the end where she said, look, if you can't find what you want at the end of your garden path, then it wasn't there to begin with. So it's all this kind of subjugation of keeping sort of women in their boxes to sort of say, well, don't go thinking outside or above your station. Just stay at home and don't look too far beyond your garden fence. So that was this kind of subliminal messaging that was coming through, and that's sort of filtered, built now to a point in which things have been flipped, rightly so. But then it's the impact on men and this sort of barometer change from where historically women have been subjugated and almost a lesser kind of being, to now coming into their own, and then this sort of shift in perspective onto sort of men now becoming desexualized.
You think that's a bit of a negative? That's like the common outlook of that situation. Do you reckon that's more on the negative side of women being subjugated? Because a lot of women would look back now and say, or look at their grandparents and say, oh man, I'd love to stay at home and have 3 kids. We can't afford it, and me and my husband are both working full time, and it's a nightmare. And they would actually like to be.
Yeah, but you can't take the two in isolation, I don't think. In terms of the economy and the ability to be able to do that you could exist on a single wage. But they didn't have the choice necessarily. It was the sort of thing. I go back to the lyrics of that song. It was like, to find a husband, to find a man to support you, because the odds were stacked against you as a woman in terms of being financially independent. Yeah. Whereas now you have the choice. You could be financially independent, or you could be a stay-at-home mum, depending on your social circumstances, your the economy of scale in terms of that. So there's choice now. You could argue, is there too much choice? Is there, the parameters aren't there anymore. The restrictions have gone. And, that is where we're at.
Yeah, they got the choice. People have got the choice. Obviously, women can enter the workforce. They have been doing that for many decades, even though if it was harder before. But you are right, it changes the dynamics of a relationship. They're not so reliant potentially on a man. I don't know what that does to the family structure, James. It's not a good thing to be able to be forced into a relationship, but it's sort of like the throwaway culture of dating, where you've got unlimited choice, which then becomes an issue. So if we look at the dating side, where the top 10% of men are the ones that 95% of the women are going after, but men's pool of women is much broader. How do we square that circle, James?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting you bring that. I had a conversation not too long ago regarding the modern dating scene, which makes me sound ancient, and the fact there is so much choice.
Yeah.
And where there is a large pool.
Choice for who though, James?
Well, so
because it's not for a lot of guys. There's a 90% of guys.
I had with a woman.
Yeah.
And from her perspective, the guys were like, I don't want to commit. I'm looking at all my options. I might want to travel. And these are guys in their sort of, early 30s. So they're not, like lads in their late teens, early 20s. These are guys, that bit older. And they're going, I don't want to commit. I don't want to settle down. I want to travel. And bearing in mind, they've got an app with access to wherever they end up. They've got that at their fingertips. So the options are there. And again, clearly depends on, the individual, the guy we're talking about. But this particular one was like,
is this a good looking guy over 6 foot? Is that who you're talking to? Because a lot of the guys will say they hardly hardly getting
I don't know who the guy, I don't know who the guy was, how attractive he was, how tall he was, what his prospects were. So this is not an exhaustive kind of study, but it's just an observation in respect of that particular conversation, which I found really interesting. So, we're in a situation now where the unlimited choice is there. You can almost kind of have a prescription for the type of person that you want to be with, like you said, how tall they are.
Yeah.
Hair color, eye color, interests, everything can be tailor-made to the individual. And then what you end up with, you may get physically what you want, and you may get an element of character that you want, interests that you want. But you could end up with, somebody that just isn't compatible, even though you've been very descriptive and very kind of designer.
Or you think there's always something there might be always something a little bit more perfect.
I mean, you always hear these stories as like, I wasn't attracted to him or her at the beginning, or they weren't the type of my usual type, but there was something about them that was, a conversation that we had, or it was an interaction. I was like, wow. And then perceptions completely changed. If everything is so cemented in what you think you want, and then there's no variation of that, there's no outside of that specific ideal, then of course you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah. But what I've read on the online is that there are a lot of guys, a high percentage of guys who are swiping and not even getting matches. Like their volume of swiping is just so much higher than what a woman would have to do, because men's preferences are.
I'd probably challenge that, mate, to be honest.
Well, we're going to bring up the data after this, James,
you bring up the data. You tell me
completely wrong on this one. I'm with the guys on this one, but the dating scene obviously has changed, a lot. Are men even confident enough to go and speak to a woman anymore on the street, in a pub, or in the pub? There's all the pubs are closing down.
What's appropriate in terms of approach and what's inappropriate?
So is that demasculinizing for them even to think about it? Is it harassment, or is it only harassment when you're not good looking?
Yeah. I mean, clearly there's inappropriate behavior, and there's, and a perception, because you and I are both men of a certain age. We haven't been through what many women have been through in terms of harassment, in terms of, just going out on a night out. I can't imagine what it must be like to be a woman. Certainly back, when I'm 10 years older than you, but kind of the clubbing scene and just things that were going on around you, entirely inappropriate.
Yeah.
And, it must be unbearable and incredibly anxiety inducing. For a guy, it is different in that respect. Yes, you've got the threat of violence from other men, potentially.
Yeah.
But, you're not in a situation where you're constantly being harassed.
I don't even know. I think in certain situations that is true, but I think that even is a bit of a
feels like it's
negative
changed.
spin.
It feels like it's changed.
There's a movement in America where women are saying they are actually peed off that men don't approach them.
So this is what I'm saying, is that you've got that barometer, that massive barometer swing that you can't then go back and be romantic about the sort of the, you know, in my era, the sort of the 90s of saying that was a way to do it. That was a better way, that, you know, men would walk up to women and sort of, you know, give them the chat up line, offer to buy them a drink.
Yeah.
You know, you've then got this situation where, you know, women's drinks are getting spiked, and, you know, you can't then trust, and you've got to keep your hand over the top, or have a bottle with a straw in it. All those, that was never a thing.
No.
You know, in my era, that was much more sort of the early 2000s to mid 2000s. I think that then started to become a phenomena. So, you know, all of these things you've got to kind of take into consideration. But you've then, as you said, you've got this kind of this counter culture of now, it's like, is that weird to go up and talk to somebody?
Yeah. I think it's pretty, I reckon the percentages is very high online. I think it's probably the meeting online is super high. And that is the only avenue. So if you're not in that group where your preference is, maybe you're 5'8", 5'9" male, you know, you're not naturally, you know, you might not be the best looking guy in the world.
But mate, the problem is, if you're then sort of saying on your profile that you are, you know, nudging 6 foot and you are 5'8", but you know, you've in your Cuban heels, or you've got a little insert in your shoes that brings you up to that height. It's like, that's a hell of a way to start, isn't it? In terms of a relationship.
Yeah.
Like, but it's whether you stand a chance, whether the algorithm is just going to put you to the bottom of the list if you don't have those kind of ideal stats. And
it really leads on to sort of maybe a feminization of men in society, where they're more into, I don't know if they are more into their grooming or not. I see sort of guys from the 60s, 70s, hairy chest, wild hair. Yeah, they did wear tight trousers and flares and stuff, and you could say it was quite provocative in that sense. But nowadays, is there more of a grooming thing, like you said before, with hair transplants
and over grooming?
And have you seen this thing called looks maxing? This new trend that's going around with the youngsters.
No,
it's like boys are like doing all of this, instead of talking to girls, they're basically staying at home and doing looks maxing, where they're doing like gurning to try and like increase their cheek muscles and definition. They're doing like tapping of their cheeks, trying to smash their bone so it protrudes out, so you're better looking. They're doing like operations where they cut part of their jaw to bring jaw forwards, and hair transplant. They're basically obsessed with how they look. And gym culture can be a bit like that, James, can't it? Because I said to you, is gym super feminine?
It's interesting. And again, it kind of depends on the gym, because you get like spit and sawdust bodybuilding
gyms. Is that real? Is it quite an I don't know. I think it's quite feminine, which is fine, but it is what it is. I think it is a little bit the grooming side. Who are you doing it for? What's that about?
And this is me speaking from my own experience, and I can only speak for myself. You can only speak for yourself. But my relationship with the gym has very much come out of self-esteem issues, of wanting to look like you don't want to be messed with. You know, underneath, and nothing could be further from the truth. You know, like now the shaved head, the beard, the whatever. It's not so much a projection, and this is a fairly recent development, but it's certainly historically been about looking like you don't want to be messed with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I started gym as well.
It's the protective element. Mixed in with that, I'd say that was the majority of the motivation. Mixed in with that was wanting to feel good about yourself, you know, feeling like, and the sense and the feeling you get after you work out.
Yeah.
So there's those kind of, but I would say the majority of it, if you're really honest with yourself, comes from that deep sense of insecurity and not wanting to be fucked with, basically.
Yeah, which may morph into just being healthier potentially if you sort of grow out of that in your older age potentially, or fitness. But yeah, mine definitely was as well to do with sort of being attacked and then trying to be as strong as possible the second time round.
And the irony is that actually, that, you know, it can put you into
people want to test you.
Yeah. There's the irony right there.
Yeah, and the chances of you getting into predicaments is, I say this with my wife as well, because you watch the news and you see how, you know, people being attacked and stuff. But if you look at it statistically, I said to my wife, you probably walk past a million men a day, and not one of them look at you, harass you, do anything to you. It's only going to take one idiot. And then all of a sudden, you've judged a million people because you haven't just noticed that they haven't done anything to you. They're just normal guys.
Yeah.
And I think that happens across society quite a bit, doesn't it? When you got a few bad eggs who are, you know, chauvinistic or do stuff that's completely inappropriate, and it spoils it for the rest of them.
It goes right across the board, doesn't it? With immigration, that, you know, as soon as somebody perpetrates something, that's it. All immigrants tarred with the same brush. Religions tarred with the same brush.
Yeah.
So, you know, there has to be. You can understand, you know, if this happens to you as an individual, it's very different in terms of your perspectives going forward. It's never happened to you. You can say, look, you know, it's all love and peace, man. Like everybody should love each other and all that sort of thing. So, but at the end of the day, it's like whatever your lived experience is. But do you think men are becoming more emasculated, and there clearly are environmental factors?
I think so, James.
Reducing of testosterone levels,
that's
environmental factors clearly are there. You know, diet, exercise,
sperm counts were down.
Counts are on the decrease.
Yeah, man boobs is on the increase. It's like, what was it, gynomastia, which is quite a big problem. Erectile dysfunction. I think because of with the economy set up in some ways on ground level, women can do extremely well now in the economy, which then change the dynamics with a guy, because women are not really judged as much on their ability to flourish in the economy, even when they do. I think where pressure for the women maybe is more aesthetic, where there is a real pressure for a man. If you're not financially doing well, that is basically the reflection on your identity and who you are. So I think there's a different,
I mean, academically as well, I think it's fairly widely accepted that girls do better at school than
girls are doing better. Yeah.
For, you know, for whatever reason. And you know, my kids are all grown up now, so I don't know what the kind of the attitude is with school. That, you know, again, from my experience growing up, it was never really cool to be academic. It's always, you know, you were sporty, you were this, or, you know, it was all kind of very much on the physicality as opposed to what your mental capacity was. You know, potentially that has changed, that, you know, being intelligent academically is the new sexy. And that's,
I think so, yeah, because the new sort of superheroes of our time are the entrepreneurs, maybe the geeky coder who's got no physicality, but has managed to acquire power through.
But saying that, interestingly, when you look at, to an extent, Elon Musk,
Yeah.
When you're looking at Jeff Bezos, clearly has transformed his body. It's interesting
Compared to what he was, wasn't he? He is he's the corporate sort of geeky, nerdy type of guy. They're not like physical specimens like the ages of Arnie and Sylvester Stallone and the 80s superheroes are sort of morphed into the sort of computer guy who's being able to control the world, isn't it? The people who can build AI, build codes.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us into the power dynamic of a powerful, wealthy man and what that represents. And the standing within the community, the attractiveness to a partner, all of those things factored in. Has that changed much over the centuries in respect of attractiveness, social standing?
It probably has, wasn't it? The reliance on your physical body in the past was probably a lot more. Now you're relying on your mental capacity to be able to be, to be able to compete in this capitalist world. But then again, if it's a capitalist world and it's even, you would say, finance, even though it's male dominated, I would argue there's quite a lot of feminine aspects within finance, which are basically brought about through laws. Because in general, you won't disrespect another man through the fear of physical altercation. Men are always a little bit more wary of each other. But when there's laws in place and you're in a workplace, you can have some guy who's just your boss just shouting at you. This would have never happened in the wild because you would have just ripped his head off. But you're constrained. There's like groups of men that are constrained, and they end up being this weird, catty, manipulative environment, which is male dominated, but is actually quite probably producing toxic feminine traits in a lot of ways.
Okay, that's interesting. So what experience of that have you had? Where's that come from?
Just reading some of the books on the guy Gary's economics, on what it was like in working in Canary Wharf, living near Canary Wharf and going to parties and seeing what the dynamics were with friends that work in the city, and understanding that, how they're working. And you see some of these guys who are the bosses and you just think, oh my God, you're not a good guy.
Toxicity.
Yeah. Your toxicity is like you want to fight basically, but you can't. I
mean, that is an individual's perspective. Has written a book, whatever, but he's saying it's based on conversations. This could be the consensus of opinion within his.
Yeah, the Wolf of Wall Street kind of thing, isn't it? With a dynamic of what it's like in these rooms. I was watching yesterday something as well. I can't remember what it was, but there's another program, isn't there? A Netflix program to do with the somebody will know it anyway. It's a Netflix to do with what it's like. It was a Chinese guy who was the boss.
Okay.
Of Canary Wharf financial place.
That's interesting.
Just showing what the environment's like inside of these places.
I mean, again, when you think about the construct, the company I used to work at many, many years ago, they had an all-female accounts department. And all the departments in that business, they had the highest turnover of staff. And we were aware constantly of, issues within that department, arguments and stuff going on. And then there were disciplinaries and, and that's no comment on women. Anecdotally, it was the and in a mostly male environment. So the rest of the company was quite male dominated. The accounts department was the anomaly. So that needs to be taken into context as well. But I mean, I used to have to go into the accounts department quite a lot, and I got quite friendly with the sort of the manager there. And yeah, she was challenging. But I got on with her really well, but there was other people within the department that just didn't like her, didn't like her style, didn't like, her attitude, whatever. But there's seemingly this thing about the support or the competition of trying to get ahead, or reacting in a way. It's really fascinating to me when you look at that as a dynamic. And that's no, right or wrong. It's just an observation. It's just what was going on, happening.
Yeah.
But really interesting to see. And there was actually the company secretary was a woman as well. And again, she could be quite challenging. And my relationship with her was very different to some of the other women's relationships.
Yeah.
So it just is, that's kind of how it is.
It's a weird dynamic, isn't it? When you've got people competing in male dominated environments, sometimes they overdo the masculine energy. Some of the women within the corporates, I had it at Santander, out of the thousands of people having interactions with, I had like one bad interaction. It was with a female director. And I don't think she would have spoken to me like that if she was a man, because it would have escalated.
Interesting.
There's no chance.
Yeah.
I mean, it was blatant, aggressive rudeness.
It's interesting.
Whereas there's a different element with guys, isn't it? You don't push each other that far because there's always a threat of violence.
Yeah, and again, depending on the individual in terms of, whether that comes from fear. The majority of it, the violence is out of fear.
Yeah,
in my opinion. The inciting violence is from a primal fear within you.
But that's not a bad thing. This is not a bad. This is just a natural evolution of our system. When I'm not saying a female driven economy is a bad thing. I don't think it is a completely high percentage female economy. It's probably like 50-50. There's different sectors, like we said, with finance is big, manufacturing might be big. We've outsourced a lot of our manufacturing, James. So I think for potentially women and men in certain industries, globalization has changed that dynamic. Men normally was working on a farm, and now we've transitioned into other jobs, haven't we? So it's a complete shift.
Yeah, I mean, utopia is you get a balance of both.
Yeah,
I mean, again, from my perspective, it feels like women have a much more complete experience of the world. It's a more rounded perspective. That they'll think about things more broadly, whereas generally speaking, guys tend to kind of be a little bit kind of compartmentalized and sort of move from A to B. I mean, again, it's incredibly stereotypical thing to say, but like, I'm here, how do I get to there? In a nutshell, it's like, and in the most direct route.
Yeah.
Whereas, again, purely from my perspective, a woman will sort of be more kind of like, well, let's go and explore over here and see how we feel about that. And then we'll kind of move over to here. They will get to point B, but it's just a kind of a more fully formed experience of arriving, and things that you pick up along the way, and then you can utilize for later. Whereas we're kind of, if we're there 100 miles an hour getting to that end point, you're there and you've potentially missed all of the other nuanced elements along the way. Now,
whereas I would have been the opposite in relationships. So I would have said I was the woman.
Yeah.
So, and I think maybe modern men in certain situations, maybe single parent, kids, haven't had a father, maybe there's elements that you haven't grown into certain parts of masculinity. Absent fathers is a massive problem for
Yeah,
both, men and
both of
women.
us. So that is going to influence our perspective on
The
what it
fact
is to
that
be a
people
man.
can't have kids because they can't afford it. My grandparents had, they was one of 15 siblings. You think to yourself, but most people can barely afford to look after themselves, let alone another
Yeah,
child, which
yeah, yeah,
changes your life and the meaning of life completely, doesn't it? When
yeah.
you haven't got that type of anchor in a society.
I mean, it's interesting how that is impacting on, rates of fertility,
Yeah.
birth rates, global population, the globe being overpopulated, which is the
Yeah.
fear. And then when you look at relationships and, people are having children potentially much later in life and the impact of that. Yeah, it's fascinating how it's all gonna impact, and how many people don't want to go through childbirth or don't want to bring kids into the world as it is at the moment, or go through, the pain of childbirth. I mean, I've only been through it with my wife 3 times, never having experienced it myself, but it must be bloody frightening.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you haven't got that community around you, where a lot of women haven't now, where they've got
Support
their
network.
sisters, their mum living close to them. Like, people are moving away from their family, aren't they? So the support networks are not there. So it leads us into the mental health and well-being side of things. Do you think maybe our mental health approach is quite sort of feminine in a way and directed towards women, where the way we have like talk therapy and things like that, whereas I'd argue that talk therapy might be great for a woman to talk through your problems and your feelings, where men can feel even more like they're useless or or they haven't got the respect or they don't feel useful. It can be the same way of trying to help people, but it can have two different effects depending on who that person is, can't it, James?
Yeah, and again, it's, on an individual case by case basis. I mean, I've had talk therapy, I've had EMDR, this kind of, rapid eye movement desensitization type thing, hypnotherapy. And the majority of the stuff that I've done, I kind of over intellectualized. I thought I knew better.
Yeah.
And preempted stuff. Oh, I know what's coming. I know what you're going to say. And I didn't, allow myself to relinquish control to the process. And it's only when I did that actually it started making a difference. And again, we've talked about it, and guys that get together and maybe walk and talk. But I still, and I've experienced it, is that there's still this resistance to actually open up and not talk about mundanity or what you do for a living, or potentially what I can get out of you as a contact. This whole kind of networking scenario.
Yeah.
And is it when's too much too much? When are you oversharing? And at what point is that appropriate to say that I've been sexually abused as a child, and this is the impact that it's had on me, etc., etc. People go, whoa, that's a lot. And again, it comes down to the individual, and you've got to kind of, this is a primeval response, I think, to know whether somebody is going to abuse that information or be able to receive it in a way that it's a tricky one to navigate. But I guess you've got to trust in your instincts about the person that you are telling this to, that they can receive it and say something along the lines of, I'm really sorry that happened to you, as opposed to going, well,
I agree. I would definitely separate probably like a traumatic experience of somebody talking it like that and a general sort of male malaise or disconnection in society, where they need like a meaningful task, like to go and build a school. or just go and do something and get to the end of the day and feel like you've achieved something worthwhile, or to be respected, or to get mastery.
And it's that manual element, isn't it? I think it's that kind of building something.
You know, having like a very traumatic experience, I would say. That's why I say maybe in therapy we've leaned towards like the feminine side, rather than trying to explore other ways, like send the guy out to do something.
Well, there's an organization, you know, the majority of it guys are like in their 60s, 70s, so again of a generation, and it's kind of man shed. So guys will get together and they'll go build stuff, you know, do some woodwork, or, you know, I think green gyms are fantastic. We go out and just clear paths in the country.
Community service is
community service type sort of stuff. It's physical work, 100%. The nature of doing that in a group of other guys, you know, talking, not talking, but all in it together. You know, I think is hugely, hugely beneficial. And then you can look back at the path behind you, which has just been cleared, and go, well, we did that. That's great, isn't it?
Sense of achievement, done something, ticked it off, sort of like just making your bed, isn't it? I think that can be very powerful when it comes to that sort of psychological side. But where do you think it's going in the future, James? Because I personally think we're probably going towards some type of genderless robotic future on a long enough timeline. Where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I mean, it's the problem we've got is we've watched lots of films that have, you know, science fiction films. So, for example, Demolition Man, where, you know, there isn't the need for physical contact anymore. That, you know, life continues in a test tube.
Yeah.
And we're all wearing sort of bodysuits that have got sensors built into them and having an experience that way without the need for the physical touch.
Yeah.
Now, that could be science fiction and things that, you know, but from what reports are telling us now is that we are more disconnected, more disenfranchised. I have a hope that we will have a counter to that, where people will come together in physical environments. That will go to a point in which there's this sort of counter culture around that we will come back. That's my hope.
Yeah.
But, you know, with environmental factors, with pollution, with, you know, chronic stress, cortisol, you've got, you know, other factors, you know, inflammation, obesity. You were talking about sort of, you know, man boobs, all of these sort of things with testosterone replacement therapies.
I just think we're going to morph with the robots, James. I just think it's inevitable that there will be a counterculture, 100%, but the benefits of morphing will probably, you know, outweigh the cons of not doing it.
Depends on the effort involved as well. It appears like we are just looking for solutions that reduce the effort and friction.
And these robots have got no gender, have they?
No.
They can be whatever you want them to be. And then once the economy's flattened out, there is no real
and we've not even scratched the surface or talked about gender fluidity.
Yeah. There won't be any benefit to being a strong physical man, because a robot will be able to demolish you, and that's genderless. You know, there'll be robot wars where you won't need strong men who are fighting them, will you? It's just not going to be there. And then, you know, will men want this, like, woman robot that looks like a woman, moves like a woman, says exactly what they want, got the exact intellect they want, the looks they want?
I mean, the fascinating comment to sort of almost bring us to a close is when you look at global conflict. Now, clearly the majority of leaders who have been responsible for that have been men.
Yeah.
Because they are voted into positions of power. You have anomalies, you have women that do make it. I think the most recent was the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Does happen.
And her guiding the country through, I don't think she's Prime Minister anymore, but guided the country through COVID and the outcomes of that in comparison to other places in the world. So there's an argument to be made, and there's certainly a conversation to be had around, the conflicts in the world. If that had been a woman in power, would that conflict have taken place?
Would it have happened?
Would it have happened in the first place? Is it, all about ego, testosterone, beating of the chest, feeling slighted, and I'm going to retaliate? The majority of the conflicts are thinly veiled as being an emancipation of an entire nation, or from a dictatorship, but fundamentally scratch beneath the surface, and it's about resources and capitalizing on those resources for your own gains. Thinly veiled as we are coming in to save a nation from an evil dictator.
And this is men, isn't it, James?
This is men. So can you argue then, say that actually if women ruled the world, would there be any conflict?
I think it's a good argument. I think it's a good case to put forwards.
Would there be more love? Would there be more compassion? Would there be more,
like you just said, with your little work situation? It doesn't always work out like that, doesn't it? When you haven't got the threat of violence. I think the threat of violence can actually sometimes lead to peace.
But if the competition isn't there, I mean, I to an extent, I believe that in a male-dominated environment, and to do all this kind of research, that if it was a female-only company, would that mentality exist? Don't know. The fact that the men were there, you could argue whether it was sexual tension, whether it was competition to get, promoted, to bring themselves above the level, to get noticed, whatever. You can look at all those different aspects. But if everybody's on a level playing field and there isn't that need to perform in that way, is that then going to lead to kind of almost utopia, that it's just about supporting each other, it's about love, it's about nurturing those kind of maternal qualities that are innately there for some people, not for others, some women. So you can kind of start to go, well, that's utopia and it's a nice romantic idea. Whether that would really be the case, I guess we'll never know. But as time goes on, as these kind of power balances get skewed, they go up, they go down. That it's interesting to look at the graph in respect of what is happening in the world as a result of that power conflict. And I mean, it'd be great if we could just all come together and go like that, rather than being like, women have got to be dominant, males are then, subservient, males have then got to reassert their dominance, and then women become subservient, and then there's this just kind of that we could actually all coexist if we had a bloody good conversation about it.
It's probably unfair to even use the word male or female or in this, isn't it? Because you're talking about the extremes at the very top. An extreme guy who's leading a country is not going to be the sort of epitome of the average guy. They're going to be an extreme person. So.
Exactly. And bearing in mind that, you've got to be of a particular personality type.
Yeah, which is not representative of men.
No.
That's the difference, isn't it? On the extremes within these things. So
yeah,
is it? I think the economy is definitely morphing without a doubt. We're feminizing. There's a masculinization of women. I think naturally. I'm not saying whether it's a good or a bad thing is completely subjective. It is what it is. It's morphing into something. We just have to see where it goes. There's things that are negative in terms of the family unit breaking down. That has a lot to do with maybe house prices, the economy as it is, the sort of playing on the manipulative side of really digging into feminine insecurities and building a whole economy around it. And then that sort of influencing guys as well. This is just a very strange time in history, James. So we're just going to have to see how this one plays out. But all we know is that these robots are going to be gender neutral. So how they proliferate, because there will be millions of them.
Yeah. And then what rights do they have? What rights
I don't know how that's going to work out.
Humans have.
It's going to be a weird time, James.
What dystopia we've got coming.
We just have to commentate on it. But it will be strange.
We shall observe.
Anyway, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. Hope you enjoyed. A lot of these talks bring a lot more questions and answers sometimes, and we're not pretending we got the answers. Sometimes we pose a question. It doesn't mean I hold my beliefs quite loosely, James. I know you do as well. I'm always open to be.
Well, hopefully there's a level of balance there. I mean, again, we're all governed by our lived experience, one way or the other. If you've had a bad experience of certain things, then clearly it's going to be coloured in that direction. But yeah, some openness, some inquisitiveness, some questions, dialogue, encourage dialogue.
Let us know what you think.
Open to alternative.
Let us know what you think. Okay, James, have a good day, sir.
And you, mate.
I will see you again soon. Take care, everybody.
Pleasure. Bye. Love to all.